We were told the valley was empty. No towns, no roads, nothing but forest. But when our night vision picked up lights where no settlement has ever existed, Command ordered us to look away. We didn't. Within 24 hours, 5 trained soldiers vanished, one by one, without a sound. And the worst part? The town wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. We weren't supposed to see it. That was the first thing Sergeant Jackson repeated as we checked our gear, prepared to move. Our orders had been simple: conduct overwatch, report anomalies, avoid engagement. But the lights changed everything. From the ridge, the valley looked perfectly normal at first glance. Rolling woods, patches of open field, a thin ribbon of river glinting under the moon. But as the fog thinned, the shapes sharpened. Streets, rooftops, a gas station sign faintly flickering, a diner with chrome trim reflecting pale light, all arranged in a grid that should have shown up on our maps. I checked my GPS again. Blank. The screen displayed topographic lines and elevation markers, but nothing where the town clearly sat. No roads leading in or out. No structures. Just forest. Maybe outdated data, Ruiz whispered. Satellite imagery was refreshed last month, I answered. There should be something. Jackson lowered his binoculars. We confirm visually. Then we report. No entry. That lasted about 5 minutes. At 0137, a sound drifted up the valley, soft at first, like wind through wires. Then clearer, a child's voice, singing a slow, old-fashioned melody. Not joyful, almost mournful. The kind of tune you'd hear in a music box that hasn't been opened in decades. It echoed unnaturally, bouncing off trees that shouldn't have carried sound that far. Torres shivered. What kid is out at 2 in the morning? Daniels tried to laugh it off, but it came out strained. Probably a radio, somebody camping. But there were no campfires, no movement, nothing that suggested life. Then the singing stopped mid-note, cut clean like a tape splice. The lights in the valley flickered, one by one. They shut off, house lights, street lamps, the gas station sign, until only the church steeple remained illuminated, a single beam of pale light shining from its windows like a spotlight in dense fog. Jackson exhaled slowly. Change of plan. We go down. Quiet approach. If there's civilian presence, we get them out. The decision hit me like a punch. Every instinct, every briefing, every warning told us to stay put. But the sight of that lone church light burning in utter darkness pulled us forward. We moved in a staggered file down the slope. The forest seemed wrong. Branches leaned inward, forming a kind of corridor. The temperature dropped noticeably. My breath came out in visible clouds, even though the air had been mild minutes earlier. Time felt strange. The descent should have taken 20 minutes. It felt like hours. Yet when I checked my watch, only 7 minutes had passed. Anyone else feel that? Torres muttered. Keep moving, Jackson ordered. Leaves crunched under our boots, but the sound seemed delayed, like the environment reacted half a second after we did. Ruiz tested it deliberately, stomping once. The echo came late. Not possible, he whispered. As we reached the tree line, the valley came into full view, bathed in moonlight. Streets perfectly paved, storefronts clean, windows unbroken. No vehicles, no debris, no signs of weathering. It looked preserved, maintained, alive, yet desolate. My radio crackled. Echo 2-1, report position. This is Echo 2-1. We have visual on a settlement in grid 9-7. Static. Then, negative. Grid 9-7 contains forest only, no civilian structures authorized. Jackson stared at the radio like it had betrayed him. We're looking at it, he hissed. Lights, buildings, everything. Echo 2-1. Your coordinates show you stationary on ridgeline. No descent recorded. Confirm. We all froze. My GPS still displayed our original position, altitude unchanged, as though we hadn't moved at all. Ruiz checked his. Same. Torres has smacked hers. Nothing. We exchanged silent looks. The valley was right in front of us, but according to every device we carried, we hadn't moved an inch. Jackson swallowed. We proceed on foot. No more radio communication unless necessary. As we stepped onto the first stretch of asphalt, a cold wave rolled over me, like crossing an invisible threshold. The church light brightened suddenly, flaring white. Then, in the distance, the singing resumed. Only this time, it wasn't a child. It sounded like one of us. The melody twisted into words, faint but clear. Come down. Then it shifted, unmistakable. My name. My blood ran cold.
The moment the voice, my voice, faded into the night air, Jackson raised a fist, signaling us to halt. We scanned the street, our breaths fogging in the cold that shouldn't have existed in this region. The temperature drop was more than environmental. It carried a heaviness, a kind of pressure against the chest. Every instinct I had screamed to turn back, but something else, curiosity, dread, or the strange pull of the town, pushed us forward. We sweep the closest structures, Jackson whispered. Minimal noise, stay paired. Minimal noise was impossible. The silence in that place was so absolute it swallowed small sounds and amplified others. Even the soft click of Daniel's safety switch echoed faintly, bouncing unnaturally down the empty street. We approached the first building, the diner. Chrome trim, neon sign dark, glass windows unbroken. The door was shut, but somehow inviting, like it expected us. Ruiz reached it first. He touched the handle, jerked back, and stared at his glove. "It's warm," he whispered. Jackson gave a nod. "Inside, now." The moment we stepped through, the bell above the door chimed. Cheerful, bright, and completely wrong in the dead quiet around us. The diner looked like people had just been there. Coffee, steaming in mugs. A half-eaten slice of pie. A jacket draped over a stool. Salt still falling in tiny grains from a recently moved shaker. It wasn't the scene of abandonment. It was the scene of interruption. Torres moved to the counter. "These plates are warm." He lifted the fork off the pie. It left a string of cooling apple filling behind it. I scanned the room. Every detail felt curated, deliberate. The laminated menus were clean. The napkin dispenser was full. The lights flickered softly, powered by nothing we could see. "Check the back," Jackson ordered. Daniels and I moved toward the kitchen doors. They swung open with a soft whoosh. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed, casting a sterile glow over polished counters, full fridges, and pots simmering gently on the stove. Simmering. Daniels lifted one lid, then stared. "It's boiling. Actively boiling." No cook, no staff, no movement. Just food preparing itself. A sudden rhythmic tapping echoed from above us. Tap, tap, tap. "Upstairs," I whispered. The diner didn't have an upstairs, at least not from the outside, yet above the ceiling tiles, the tapping continued. Slow, precise, like footsteps pacing back and forth on the second story that shouldn't exist. We all froze. The tap stopped. Then a dragging sound replaced them, like something heavy being pulled across the floorboards of a second story that shouldn't exist. I motioned upward. Jackson gave the signal to hold position. That's when I noticed the clock on the wall. It wasn't ticking. The second hand trembled, stuck at 2:17. "Time's frozen," Ruiz muttered. "No, it's trying to move." And it was. The second hand jerked forward a millimeter, then snapped back. Forward, back, repeated, as if something was resisting its progress. "You guys need to see this," Torres's voice shook. He was kneeling by the newspaper rack. He held up the top paper. The date read June 12th, 1970. Nearly 53 years out of sync. Old prop, Daniels tried to joke, but his voice died as he flipped through the pages. Every article referenced events we'd only heard about in history briefings. "That's impossible," he whispered. The lights flickered. Once, twice, then the singing returned, this time clearer, as if drifting through the vents. It was the same melody, slow, childlike, nostalgic in the wrong way. And woven through the singing was something else. Whispering. Words we couldn't make out, overlapping, layered, like voices from every corner of the building speaking at once, but not in unison. Jackson raised his hand again. "We regroup outside now." We backed toward the door. The bell chimed again, muffled by a sudden gust of cold wind that didn't exist a second earlier. The street outside was darker than before. A fog had crept silently across the ground, swirling around our boots. And then we saw them. Figures behind the diner windows. 3, maybe 4, standing perfectly still, silhouettes pressed against the glass. But when we turned back to the diner, the windows were empty. No silhouettes, no figures. Just our reflections staring back. Except my reflection blinked a full second after I did.
For a moment, none of us moved. The fog pressed against our legs, cold and strangely heavy, as if it wanted to root us in place. I kept staring at the diner window, waiting for my reflection to sync with me again. When it finally did, snapping to match my movements, it felt like a warning rather than reassurance. Jackson motioned for us to fall back. We regroup at the intersection. No one separates. We moved quickly but quietly, boots clicking against pavement that looked new, too new. The asphalt had no cracks, no wear, no dirt. It looked freshly poured, untouched by decades of weather. Street paint was bright and crisp, like it had been laid down yesterday. Yet the town itself claimed to be from 1970. As we reached the intersection, Ruiz pointed to a brick building across from us. "That was on the left before. Now it's on the right." Daniels frowned. "What? No, you're remembering wrong." "I'm not," Ruiz insisted, stepping closer. "The hardware store sign, look. The letters were chipped on the left corner. I saw it." We walked to the storefront. The letters were still chipped. Same pattern, same shape. But the entire building had shifted to the opposite side of the street. "Town planning, maybe," Daniels muttered. "No town moves buildings overnight," I said. "You're sure it was overnight?" Torres added quietly. Before anyone could answer, Jackson tried the radio again. Static. Then a faint voice. "Echo 2, 1. Position, repeat." But the voice wasn't command. It was Torres. We all turned to him. He stared at the radio, pale. "That wasn't me." The voice repeated, clearer this time. "Torres, behind you." He spun around, weapon raised. Nothing there. The radio cut out instantly. We froze, scanning the fog. Something shifted near the gas station, a shadow sliding between pumps with unnatural smoothness. Ruiz clicked his flashlight on, but the beam barely penetrated the fog, scattering into a faint glow. "Something's wrong with the air," Ruiz murmured. "It's thick." I checked my GPS again, though I already knew the answer. It displayed the ridgeline coordinates and elevation, as if we had never descended at all. "Look at this," Torres whispered. He pointed to the street sign. "Ashford Lane." The same one we had passed on the way down. Same bent post, same rust pattern, same everything. We had walked in a circle, but the buildings around us had changed places. "It's reconfiguring itself," I whispered. Ruiz nodded slowly, "like a maze." "No," Jackson said.
A trap. We kept moving, following what should have been the exit road, Elm Street. And when we walked past the corner diner again, Daniels cursed under his breath. "It's impossible! We didn't turn, we walked straight!" But there it was again, exactly as before. Except it was different now. The coffee cups were gone. The pie was gone. The lights were dimmer, and the sign above the door flickered with a different pattern, like a heartbeat. The entire diner had reset. Torres approached the window cautiously. "It's clean, like nothing was ever touched." "Like we were never inside," Ruiz agreed. "But we were," I insisted. "We left footprints. We moved chairs." The chairs were back in perfect formation. Footprints erased, steam gone, everything restored. Something shifted in the diner booth, a quick flicker of movement. I leaned forward. A single object now rested on the counter. My dog tag. The metal pendant I had worn since deployment, the one that's still hanging around my neck. I grabbed it instinctively. My real tag was still there, still warm from my body heat. But the one inside the diner was identical. Same scratches, same serial number, same dent from the Humvee accident 2 years ago. It was mine. All of us moved back at once. "We're leaving," Jackson said. "Now!" But when we turned to go, fog surged across the street, swirling upward until it formed the outline of a figure, a tall silhouette with its head tilted unnaturally to the side, as if listening. It didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't blink. It simply existed, a dark imprint on the fog. Then slowly, its head straightened. Clicks echoed through the fog, like bones realigning. Torres whispered, "What is that?" The silhouette took one step forward, and every streetlight in the town snapped on at once.
Every streetlight blasting to life at the exact same second felt like the town inhaling. The fog, once drifting lazily across the pavement, froze mid-swirl as if suspended in place. The silhouette ahead of us didn't flinch, didn't react, just stood with its head tilted again, like it was studying us. "Eyes up," Jackson murmured. "Back away slowly." But backing away didn't change anything. The silhouette straightened fully, and then, out of the fog behind it, more shapes emerged. Not walking, not materializing, forming, like ink blooming through water. One step, another, a dozen of them, maybe more. Human-shaped, but something was off. Their walk had a rhythm, but not a human rhythm. Their heads bobbed at identical intervals. Their arms swung with mechanical consistency. They moved like they were imitating people rather than being people. Then, click. A sound snapped through the fog. Click, click, click. The figure's legs locked briefly, then continued, like machinery catching on worn gears. "They're not alive," Ruiz whispered. Torres shook his head. "No, there's something wearing the idea of alive." We formed a tight line. Jackson raised a hand. "No shots unless necessary." The marchers, because that's what they became in my mind, moved in unison toward us, but their feet never quite touched the ground. They hovered an inch above the asphalt, gliding more than stepping. Their boots looked old, worn, coated in age and dirt. But none of them left footprints. The first one stopped 10 feet away. Fog curled around its legs, hiding everything below the knees. From up close, its face became clearer. Not fully visible, but just distinct enough to make your skin crawl. A hollow imprint of a face, like someone had pressed a mannequin into fog and given it vague contours. Then its head jerked forward sharply, as though sniffing. A voice echoed, not from its mouth, but from everywhere. "Welcome back." Jackson stiffened. "We've never been here." But the marchers didn't respond. Instead, they mirrored Jackson's stance, every one of them raising an arm at the same angle, holding an invisible weapon like they were mocking our posture. "Drop it," Jackson commanded. They dropped nothing. Instead, every marcher snapped its arm upward, mimicking muzzle flashes. No sound at first. Then, bang! The entire street exploded with gunfire. Except they weren't shooting. The town was. Bullets shredded a mailbox beside Daniel's. A street lamp sparked violently, showering molten metal. A bench splintered into wood fragments. Our cover was disappearing around us. "Move!" Jackson yelled. We ducked behind a rusted pickup truck, but even that began to shudder as bullet impacts ripped through the chassis. Ruiz screamed as metal fragments sliced his arm. "Weapons free!" Jackson yelled. We opened fire on the marchers. Our shots passed through them like smoke. No resistance, no impact. But the moment each bullet passed through a marcher, the town reacted. Storefronts cracking, signs warping, windows shattering as if our weapons were tearing reality rather than bodies. "They're channeling it," Torres yelled. "They're not real, they're anchors." The marchers advanced another synchronized step. The air vibrated, humming like electrical current passing through metal sheets. The ground beneath us rippled. Then everything stopped. The gunfire ceased. The marchers froze mid-stride. The fog paused, suspended in mid-air. Even the dust hung motionless. The town held its breath. A single voice broke the stillness. A woman's voice, gentle, calm, familiar in a way that made my spine tighten. "Come home." Torres gasped. "That's my mother." Ruiz dropped his rifle. "That's my sister." I didn't want to listen, but I heard it too. A voice I hadn't heard in years. Someone I'd buried, someone I'd grieved. "Come home," it repeated. The marchers slowly raised their arms again. Not an attack this time, but an invitation. Palms out, fingers bent slightly as if beckoning us forward. "Stay together, no one moves." But something shifted inside the fog, and a figure stepped forward. Smaller, more defined. A child, holding a lantern. Its glow illuminated a narrow path leading deeper into the town. The child pointed at us. Then the marchers tilted their heads in unison, as if waiting for us to follow. And the singing began again. But this time, it wasn't one voice. It was hundreds, all around us, in every building, under the ground, above the rooftops. A chorus, perfectly harmonized, whispering our names, one by one. And then, the church bells started ringing.
The church bells didn't ring like normal bells. They didn't toll through the air. They vibrated through the ground, shuddering up through the pavement and into our boots. Every strike felt like a pulse from beneath the town, sending a wave of pressure through our chests. The marchers reacted instantly. Their heads snapped toward the church, their arms lowered. Every figure froze in the exact same pose, as if the sound had locked them in place. For a moment, it almost felt like relief. Then the fog shifted. Not rolled, not drifted. Shifted like an enormous lung inhaling. "Regroup," Jackson barked. But Ruiz was already stumbling back, clutching his head. "It's inside my ears," he gasped. Torres grabbed him. "What is?" Ruiz pointed straight down to the asphalt, eyes wide with terror. "The bells, they're under us." Before any of us could respond, the ground trembled again, soft but deliberate, like footsteps beneath the surface. The town wasn't built on something. The town was built around something. The fog thickened, swallowing the marchers until their silhouettes blurred, then vanished entirely. When the fog thinned seconds later, they were gone, every one of them, not a trace left. Only the child with the lantern remained, watching us from the center of Main Street. The lantern flickered, once, twice, and went dark. When the flame reignited, the child was gone too. "Move," Jackson whispered. "We're leaving the way we came." But that was when Torres pointed ahead, voice breaking. "The road! Guys, look!" The road out of town, the same one we had walked down before, was now splitting. Not metaphorically, literally. A jagged line tore across the asphalt, then another and another, dividing the road into geometric pieces that rotated like puzzle tiles. Each time they turned, the path rearranged. "Don't step forward," I shouted. A piece of road snapped into place where my foot would have landed. If I had stepped, I would have fallen into nothing, a void of swirling gray mist beneath rotating slabs of broken pavement. "This whole place is shifting," Daniels whispered. "No," Jackson corrected, "it's resetting." Behind us, the diner lights shut off, then the gas station sign, then the street lamps. The town was rebooting piece by piece, wiping away every trace of our presence. Torres's voice trembled. "We have to mark the ground. Anything." Ruiz pulled spray paint from his pack and tagged a bright red X on the nearest street corner. The paint streaked downward instantly, dripping, running, slipping off the surface like oil on glass. Within 3 seconds, the ground was perfectly clean again. No mark, no residue, no sign anything was ever there. "That's not possible," Ruiz whispered. "It is here," Jackson said. "Keep moving. Eyes on your buddy. No one loses visual." We pushed forward, following what should have been the road out, but every turn looked identical. Every house repeated. The same mailbox, the same porch swing, the same cracked flower pot. A perfect copy, street after street. "Wait," Daniel said, stopping abruptly. "This is the same house. Same crack in the window. Same porch light." He pointed across the street. Another identical house. And another. And another. Dozens of them. The same house, cloned infinitely. The town wasn't just shifting locations, it was folding on itself, repeating pieces to trap us. "We go back to the church," Jackson said. "It's the only stable point." None of us wanted to, but he was right. It hadn't moved. It hadn't flickered. It hadn't blurred. The bell tower still glowed faintly through the fog, a fixed point in a maze of rearranging streets. We hurried toward it. The closer we got, the more the fog seemed to part, like the church was the eye of the storm. But as we reached the front steps, something glinted on the ground. A dog tag. I picked it up slowly. It was mine. Except, not exactly. The serial number was the same, the scratches were the same, but the blood stain on the edge, that wasn't mine. Daniels backed away. "This place is copying us. It's making versions." Ruiz crouched beside me, or replacing us. Before anyone could respond, a scraping noise echoed from behind the church door. A soft, dragging shuffle, something moving inside. Then, a whisper. My voice again, closer this time. "Come inside." My blood chilled instantly. "Negative," Jackson said firmly. "We regroup outside." But then Torres screamed. We spun around. The street behind us was gone. Not fogged over. Gone. Replaced by a wall of white light and shadowy figures pressing against it, their outlines stretching and contracting like they were trying to force their way through. And in the center of that shifting wall of silhouettes, one figure stepped forward. Me. A perfect copy. Expression blank, eyes hollow, head tilting slowly. It lifted a hand and pointed directly at me, then smiled.
For a heartbeat, no one moved. My copy, my perfect double, stood motionless at the edge of the white wall, its smile thin and unnatural, stretching too wide at the corners, as if the muscles beneath the fog didn't know how to form the expression correctly. Its eyes, empty, hollow impressions, tilted slightly as it studied me. It wasn't curiosity, it was recognition. "Do not approach it," Jackson ordered, voice low but steady. As if the copy heard him, its head twitched sharply, once to the left, once to the right,
and then it took a single step forward. The white wall behind it rippled like liquid, distorting the silhouettes trapped on the other side. Dozens of hands pressed outward, palms flattening against the surface, stretching the membrane of light like rubber. Ruiz stumbled back. They're trying to get through! But they weren't pushing randomly. They pushed in rhythm, in waves, in perfect synchronization with the slow, deep sound rising behind us. The church bell. Dong, dong, dong. Every strike aligned with the silhouettes pressing harder, as though the bell was permission or a command. My copy stopped just 3 feet away, head still tilted, smile frozen. Then, slowly, its lips parted. But the voice that came out wasn't mine. It was every voice I'd ever heard in my life speaking at once. Family, friends, teammates, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all layered perfectly, forming the exact tone I used, the exact cadence of my speech, woven together into a single whisper that somehow felt louder than a shout. Come home. The sound hit me like a physical force. My knees buckled for half a second. I pressed a palm to the pavement to steady myself. The ground vibrated beneath my hand like a heartbeat pulsing through the concrete. Torres grabbed my shoulder. Hey, don't listen. Look at me. But even his voice sounded distant, muffled, as if cotton had been stuffed into my ears. Another whisper drifted through the air, this time behind us. Torres. He spun, weapon raised. Who said that? No one answered. Then a third whisper, soft but unmistakable. Ruiz, this way. Ruiz's breathing quickened. That's my sister. No, Jackson snapped. It's not. But the whispers multiplied. Daniel, come inside. Stay forever. We missed you. Don't leave again. Please, please, please. They didn't sound threatening. That was the worst part. They sounded pleading, emotional, familiar. Too familiar. The white wall pulsed again, this time stretching further outward, the silhouettes pressing through more aggressively. One hand slipped through, thin, gray, shadow-like, and Ruiz recoiled violently as it brushed the edge of his boot. The hand withdrew instantly, but the white membrane rippled like water disturbed by a stone. We're boxed in, Daniel said, scanning the entries. No, Jackson replied. There's still one way. He motioned toward the bell tower. The church door stood open now, wide open. Warm golden light spilled out, flickering like candlelight. It looked inviting, calm, almost comforting. I could hear something deeper inside the church. Not singing, not whispers. Breathing. Dozens of breaths layered together, slow and steady, syncing with the bell tolls. Dong. Inhale. Dong. Exhale. We're not going in there, Daniel said firmly. Absolutely not. Jackson glared at him. No one asked for votes. Move. But then, the white wall rippled again. And this time, it advanced. The entire wall of silhouettes stepped forward in perfect unison, pressing the membrane outward like a balloon expanding. Cracks formed along the air itself, thin fractures of light splitting the darkness. We stepped back instinctively, but Torres froze. His eyes widened. Mom? A silhouette on the wall, small, delicate. The outline was unmistakable. The shape of the hair, the height, even the tilt of the head. Torres, the whisper said softly. Mijo, come back. Torres stepped toward it. Stop, Jackson shouted. But the whisper grew stronger, softer, more loving. Come home, mijo. Don't leave again. Tears filled Torres's eyes. She died years ago, he whispered. The silhouette pressed closer. Come home. Torres took another step. Ruiz lunged for him. Torres, no! It's lying! But Torres moved faster than any of us expected. He broke free, sprinting toward the wall of light, screaming, "Mom!" We all watched in horror as he reached for the silhouette. The wall absorbed him instantly. There was no scream, no struggle, no impact. He didn't vanish. He folded, like his body had been pulled inward, compressed flat, and drawn into the shifting membrane of light. His dog tags dropped to the pavement with a soft metallic clink. Silence. Then, the wall pulsed again. Another silhouette formed near the surface. Torres, perfectly still, head tilted, eyes hollow, and smiling.
For several seconds, none of us breathed. Torres's silhouette, flat, translucent, yet horrifyingly detailed, pressed against the glowing membrane like a photograph floating under ice. His smile didn't belong on his face. It pulled too wide, too still, and his head tilted at the exact same angle as the other shapes behind him. Daniels whispered, That's not him." "No," Jackson said quietly. "That's what took him." The white wall pulsed again, as though reacting to our voices. Torres' silhouette rippled along with it, distorting for a moment before snapping back into place like elastic. Ruiz staggered backward, nearly tripping over himself. We can't fight this," he gasped. "No," Jackson agreed, "but we might be able to outrun it. Move!" He pointed toward the church, now the only structure not swallowed in darkness. Its doors were still open, light spilling out like a golden wound in the night. The glow from within pulsed faintly, syncing with the slow, heavy toll of the bells. Dong, dong, dong. We sprinted toward the entrance. Behind us, the white wall advanced, slow, steady, unstoppable. The silhouettes didn't run, they glided forward, pressed against the surface like flies pinned under glass, their faces stretching towards us. I nearly tripped on the church steps, catching myself on the wooden railing. The moment my hand touched it, warmth surged through my palm, like living warmth, like skin. I jerked back. "Inside now," Jackson barked. We stepped through the doorway, and the sound changed instantly. Everything outside muted, replaced by a thick, suffocating stillness. The fog vanished, the cold vanished. Even the pulsing white glare faded, swallowed by the interior glow. Inside the church, candles flickered along the walls, their flames swaying in a rhythm that matched the bell tolls. Pews stretched down the aisle in long, narrow rows, shadowed yet pristine. The air smelled faintly of something old, like dried flowers and aged wood. Daniels whispered, "This place, it's untouched." Ruiz shook his head. "No, it's waiting." We stepped deeper inside. The doors slammed shut behind us with a violent crack, making Ruiz jump. Jackson spun around and reached for the handles. They didn't budge. "Locked," he muttered. "No," I said. "It's sealed." As if answering, the candles along the right wall flared brighter for a moment. Shadows stretched long across the pews, reaching towards us like grasping fingers. Then we heard it. Breathing. Low. Slow. Dozens of breaths, all in sync. We turned toward the altar and froze. The front of the church wasn't empty. A choir stood there, an entire choir lined in perfect formation. Men, women, and children of various ages, not moving, not blinking, their mouths slightly open as they breathed in unison. Their skin was pale, almost translucent. Their eyes were milky white, gazing blindly ahead. And then, as if on cue,
Every one of them turned their head towards us at the exact same time. I felt the air drain from my lungs. Daniels whispered hoarsely, Are they alive?" "They're something," Jackson said. Ruiz pointed with a shaking hand. "Look!" Behind the choir, framed by the altar, was a door of pure white light. Not glowing like a lamp, not shining like a spotlight. It shimmered like fabric made from clouds. The choir stepped aside in perfect unison, revealing the doorway fully. A pull moved through my chest, subtle at first, then stronger, like a thread hooked beneath my ribs, tugging me forward. "No," Jackson growled, grabbing my shoulder. "Don't go near it." But the choir began to hum, a low, haunting tone that vibrated through the wooden floor. The candles flickered in perfect rhythm. The entire church seemed to breathe with them. Then the humming shifted into words, faint, layered, chilling. "Come home, come home, come home." Ruiz gripped his head. "Stop, stop, stop!" He dropped to his knees, trembling. The choir's humming grew louder. Behind us, the door we'd entered began banging violently, something pounding from the outside, desperate to get in. The white silhouettes, the marchers, the wall pushing closer. Daniel shouted, "We're cornered!" The floor trembled. Cracks formed along the aisle, glowing faintly like molten veins beneath the wood. The church wasn't safe. It was a funnel, a trap guiding us to the glowing doorway. The altar pulsed with light. The choir raised their arms in perfect synchronization. The humming grew deafening. And the doorway suddenly expanded, stretching wider, taller, revealing faint shapes inside it. Children, adults, soldiers, faces we recognized, faces we didn't, all calling silently. Something inside the white light extended a hand outward, a hand that looked exactly like mine. And then the doorway spoke, in my voice. "Come home."
The hand reaching from the glowing doorway looked solid, too solid. Not a shape made of fog or light, but skin, bone, tendons. My own hand, down to the faint scar across the knuckle where I'd cut myself on barbed wire years ago. It beckoned with slow, deliberate movements, palm up, fingers curling with silent insistence. For a moment, I felt weightless. The church, the others, the pounding on the sealed doors, all of it faded into a distant hum. The pulsing light wrapped around my mind like warm cloth, smoothing out every thought, every warning, every instinct. "Come home." The phrase circled in my head like a mantra. I took one step toward the light. Jackson grabbed my vest and yanked me back with a force that knocked the air out of my lungs. The spell shattered instantly, leaving my head ringing and my vision blurred. "Stay with me," Jackson growled, gripping my collar. "Fight it!" The glowing doorway pulsed violently, as though angered. The choir's humming deepened into a distorted chorus, their mouths stretching unnaturally wide as they sang without drawing breath. The pews trembled, the candles flared, the entire church shook like something massive had awoken beneath the floorboards. Behind us, the banging at the door intensified. Each hit left cracks splintering through the wood, glowing faintly white, like the light outside was eating its way in. Daniels turned pale. "They're breaking through! We've got seconds!" Ruiz clutched his head, rocking on his knees. "It's inside. They're in our thoughts. They're in all our thoughts." The choir abruptly stopped humming. The silence hit like a physical blow. Then, in perfect unison, every member of the choir inhaled. Sharp, fast, audible. The glowing doorway expanded explosively, swallowing half the altar in luminous white. Figures took shape inside, stepping forward with fluid, unnatural grace. Soldiers in old uniforms, townsfolk in faded clothing, children with hollow eyes. And among them, Torres. His silhouette walked out first, no longer pressed flat against light, fully formed, but wrong. Too smooth, too perfect. His face gleamed faintly, as if polished,
He tilted his head at us, smiling that same impossible smile. "Home," he whispered. Jackson lifted his rifle. "Don't you come any closer." Torres, whatever was wearing his shape, kept walking. The pounding behind us turned into splintering wood as cracks widened across the door. Hands, gray, boneless, flickering like smoke, pushed through, clawing at the air. "We're done," Daniels shouted. "We're out of time." "No," Jackson said. "We go up." He pointed toward the narrow staircase near the front of the church, the climb to the bell tower. The glowing doorway recoiled at the sight of it. The choir hissed collectively, stepping forward to block the path. But the shaking of the church grew stronger. Dust rained from the rafters. The glowing cracks in the floor widened, revealing nothing below, just an endless depth of swirling white mist. The church wasn't going to hold. "We move," Jackson ordered. "Now!" We dashed toward the staircase. The choir surged after us, their feet dragging across the wooden floor in jerky, uneven strides. Ruiz tried to stand, but his legs buckled. Daniels grabbed him and threw his arm over his shoulder. The first choir member reached the pew beside me and lunged. Its arms stretched impossibly long, fingers elongating into pale tendrils. I ducked, feeling them graze the back of my neck like ice water. Jackson fired. The bullet tore through the figure's chest and punched a hole in the church wall behind it. The choir member didn't react. Instead, the town responded. The floor beneath it cracked, wood splintering in a violent burst. "They don't take damage," Daniels shouted. "No," Jackson said, "but the town does. Move!" We hit the stairs. The pounding on the church doors became a deafening barrage. Something slammed into them from outside, something massive. The hinges shrieked, the frame split, and then the doors burst inward. The white wall surged inside, carrying dozens of silhouettes with it. They poured into the church like a collapsing wave, filling the aisle, the walls, the ceiling, stretching, reaching, pressing forward with relentless hunger. We raced up the staircase, the wooden steps groaning under our boots. Each step brought us closer to the bell tower, the only place the light hadn't warped, the only place untouched. Jackson kicked the stairwell door open. Fresh, cold air blasted in from the tower. We scrambled onto the upper platform, the bells looming above us like massive bronze guardians. Then, quiet. For a terrifying moment, everything stilled. Ruiz sagged against the railing. Daniels gasped for breath. Jackson blocked the stairwell entrance, rifle raised. Below us, the white light filled the church entirely, spilling into the hall like rising water. Figures pressed upward, silhouettes stretching, climbing, crawling with relentless hunger. The tower shuddered. The light began to climb the stairwell. "Jackson," I whispered. He didn't turn. He simply said, "Get ready to jump."
The tower vibrated beneath our boots as the white light surged up the stairwell, stretching like a living tide. The silhouettes within it clawed upward, arms lengthening, faces flattening, bodies blending into one shifting mass. Each step it climbed made the wooden boards groan, bending as if under impossible weight. Jackson didn't look back. He braced himself at the edge of the bell tower, eyes fixed on the dark forest below. "We jump on my count," he said. "It's the only way out." Daniel stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "It's a 50-foot drop. We'll break every bone." "Better broken bones than becoming that," Jackson snapped, pointing toward the stairwell. The white mass reached the top step. It hesitated there, pulsing, watching us. Ruiz let out a whimper as one silhouette pressed its face against the railing. Its features shifted, melting into different people, men, women, children, rapidly cycling like a deck of cards being shuffled. Each face repeated the same phrase: "Stay, stay, stay." The bell above us suddenly groaned, metal straining. It swayed gently, then swung harder, as if something inside it was trying to break free. The air vibrated around us, the low hum shaking my ribs. The light advanced, pouring into the tower. Jackson shouted, "On 3!" But the word died in his throat, because something rose from the light.
Not a silhouette, not a figure, a shape far larger. A head, but not human, rounded, smooth, its surface rippling like liquid marble. No face, only one mouth, wide, toothless, stretching into the suggestion of a smile. The choir's humming suddenly returned, deafening now, vibrating through the beams. The bells shook violently. The mouth opened. A sound poured out. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a moan. It was a memory. My own voice, my own words from years ago repeated perfectly. I want to go home. Something broke inside me hearing that. Something old, something I'd buried. The white light creature extended a limb upward, reaching for us. The tower began to crumble under the pressure. Jackson looked over his shoulder, finally seeing the thing in full. His voice cracked. "Jump!" Ruiz didn't hesitate. He vaulted over the railing, disappearing into the dark. Daniels followed seconds later, screaming as he fell. Jackson grabbed my vest and shoved me toward the edge. "Go!" But I hesitated. Something called my name. Not whispered, not echoed. Said, clearly, calmly, lovingly. It was a voice I had not heard since childhood. "Come home, sweetheart." My mother. I froze. The white light surged. Jackson slammed his shoulder into me, knocking the breath out of my lungs as I toppled over the edge. The cold air tore at my face as I plummeted downward. Branches cracked beneath me, slowing the fall, but pain exploded through my ribs as I hit the forest floor. I rolled, tumbled, until the world stopped spinning. I opened my eyes. The valley was gone. No lights, no fog, no church. Only untouched forest and pale dawn breaking across the horizon. I tried to stand, but pain lanced through my leg. I crawled to a tree and pulled myself upright, gasping for air. Ruiz lay nearby, unconscious but breathing. Daniels was nowhere to be seen. And Jackson? I looked back toward where the bell tower should have been. Nothing remained. Just forest. As if the town had never existed. Just as command always insisted. I radioed for extraction. This time they answered instantly. "Echo 21, we've been trying to reach you for hours. Report." Hours. It had felt like days. I turned slowly, scanning the tree line one last time. Nothing moved. But at the edge of the woods, partially buried beneath leaves, something glinted. A dog tag. Jackson's. Still warm. The debrief was a blur. They told me again and again I'd imagined it, that stress causes hallucinations, that trauma creates false memories, that the valley contained nothing, had always contained nothing, that my teammates were missing due to terrain misadventure. But that wasn't the end. 3 nights after returning home, I woke to a familiar glow outside my bedroom window. Soft, yellow, steady, the exact light from the diner. When I looked out, I saw them. Houses where no houses should be. A steeple rising behind the trees. A single street lamp flickering in the dark. And between the trunks, a child holding a lantern. Waiting. Watching. And when the wind shifted, I heard it. A voice. My own voice. Calling softly, "Come home." So before they find me again, I need to warn as many people as possible. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. And tell me, what country are you watching from? I need to know how far this is spreading.
Because once the town sees you, it never lets go.